The room looked less like a dining room and more like a verdict. Light did not fill it. It hovered. Low pendant lamps poured a muted amber glow over black stone, crystal, and silver so polished it seemed untouched by human hands. The rest of the room remained surrendered to shadow. At the far end of the long table, a man waited beside a chair he had not yet taken. He stood perfectly still, not welcoming, not warm, simply present in the way powerful men often are, like the room had been arranged around his existence, and everything inside it, from the candles to the silence to the woman now standing at the threshold, had entered his orbit long before it understood the cost. For one suspended second, neither of them spoke. His gaze moved over her slowly, not hungrily, not crudely, precisely, like an appraiser standing before an acquisition too rare to touch carelessly. The dark red dress she wore caught the low light and returned it in slow, controlled flashes, the color shifting like blood beneath lacquer. She had put it on alone. She had fastened the clasp at her throat with steady hands. She had built the mask she now wore with deliberate care. And still, under his eyes, she felt the unsettling truth of it. The transformation was complete. He did not smile. Something colder passed through his face. Approval, perhaps, or satisfaction sharpened into restraint. Then, at last, he moved. One step forward, measured, unhurried. The distance between them changed at once, though he remained several feet away. That was the nature of certain men. They did not need proximity to alter the air. "Sit," he said. Just that. No greeting, no softness. The command was quiet, but the room obeyed it before she did. She crossed the final stretch of polished floor and took the chair indicated for her. The sound of the legs moving lightly against stone seemed indecently loud in the room's suffocating calm. He sat opposite her only after she had done so, as if the ritual required her placement first. Between them, the table gleamed like a line drawn in law. Porcelain, crystal, silver. A narrow arrangement of black flowers she did not recognize. Everything exquisite, everything severe. A server appeared soundlessly from the edge of the room, placed the first plate before her, then vanished with the same eerie efficiency. The dish itself was delicate to the point of insult, thin slices of fish translucent under a sheen of oil, scattered herbs, tiny pearls of citrus, edible petals placed with surgical precision. Luxury designed to look effortless. She lifted her fork. The metal touched porcelain with a faint click that seemed to echo. Across from her, he watched. Not casually, not politely. He watched the angle of her wrist, the way she held the stem of her glass, the pause before she tasted anything, the measured control of her breathing. Nothing about his attention felt social. It felt forensic. She took a bite. The flavor bloomed cold and expensive across her tongue: salt, smoke, acid, something floral she could not name. Under any other circumstance, it might have been beautiful. Here, it tasted like strategy. Silence resumed. It did not settle between them. It thickened. She became aware of every sound in microscopic detail: the whisper of fabric when she shifted in her chair, the controlled inhale before she raised the glass, the soft contact of silver against china, the low ambient hum of hidden systems moving through the walls. Outside, somewhere unimaginably far below, the city continued its restless motion. But here in this room, time had narrowed to the movement of two people pretending this was dinner and not an interrogation conducted with crystal and candlelight. He set down his glass. The gesture was small. The effect was immediate. Her pulse answered before he spoke. "How does it feel," he asked, "to begin your new life?" The question was simple. That made it worse. Not because she did not understand its meaning, because she understood too many meanings inside it at once. New life, new rules, New ownership. New confinement disguised as salvation. She looked up at him. His expression revealed almost nothing, but his attention had sharpened. He had not asked to fill the silence. He had placed a blade in the middle of the table and wanted to see whether she would pick it up. She rested her fork down with deliberate care. "It feels," she said, "like expensive packaging around a hostage situation." The answer landed cleanly. For one heartbeat, the room seemed to contract. Then the faintest shift touched his mouth, not a smile, but the ghost of private recognition. As if defiance, when intelligently delivered, pleased him more than obedience ever could. "And yet," he said, "you accepted the terms." Her spine straightened. "For someone who needed my agreement, you seem very eager to call it consent." The silence that followed was razor-thin. He leaned back slightly in his chair, one hand resting near his glass, the other still. The pendant light above him carved his features into planes of gold and shadow, making him look less like a man at dinner and more like a portrait of controlled appetite. "You misunderstand me," he said at last. "I'm not interested in what you call it." His gaze held hers. "I'm interested in whether you intend to survive it intelligently." Her throat tightened, though she refused to let it show. The next course arrived. A small plate, dark sauce, white porcelain, meat so tender it nearly separated beneath the pressure of the knife. Something seasonal, something rare, something chosen not just for cost, but for effect. She barely tasted it. The table had become a field of signals. Every bite delayed or taken too quickly could be read. Every glance measured, every silence interpreted. Across from her, he seemed entirely at ease inside the tension, as though this atmosphere, this exquisite suffocation, was not something he had created for the evening, but the natural extension of his mind. "Your father is safe," he said. The knife in her hand stopped. He had not raised his voice. He had not softened it either. Just placed the fact before her. A gift. A reminder. A leash. She looked up slowly. "You say that like I should thank you." "No," he said. "I say it because you should understand what my protection costs." Something in her stomach turned cold. The room was too warm. The candles too steady. The silver too bright. She forced her hand to move again. "And what exactly am I supposed to be now?" she asked. "A charity project? A debt repaid in installments?" His eyes darkened, not with anger, but with focus. "No." He set down his fork. "You are not a guest." Each word arrived with terrifying composure. "You are an investment." Her breath went shallow. He continued before she could answer. "And I always protect my investments." The sentence did not sound threatening. That was the most frightening part. It sounded like doctrine, like something he believed with the same certainty other people reserve for sunrise. She should have recoiled. Instead, something more dangerous happened. She understood him. Not fully, not safely, but enough. Enough to realize that in his language, protection and possession might be separated by nothing at all. The meal continued, though neither of them seemed interested in food any longer. Dessert appeared untouched between them, something exquisite layered in dark chocolate and gold leaf, too beautiful to destroy, too decadent to feel innocent. The wine caught candlelight like liquid garnet. Somewhere midway through the final course, she lost all sense of sequence. There was only his gaze, the suffocating elegance of the room, and the quiet certainty that this dinner had never been about appetite. It had been about calibration, testing, seeing how much pressure she could absorb before she cracked, and whether she would break in fear or sharpen. At last he stood. The movement rearranged the room. She remained seated for a fraction of a second too long, then rose as well. The chair behind her made almost no sound. She wished, absurdly, that it had. Some crude noise to puncture the unbearable refinement of the moment. He came around the table slowly, not circling like a predator in any obvious, theatrical way. That would have been easier to resist. No, he moved with the calm of a man who had no need to hurry because the outcome had already begun. By the time he stopped in front of her, the room felt smaller than the elevator had. The scent of him reached her first. Not one note, but layers. Dark wood, expensive cologne warmed by skin, a trace of whiskey. Something cleaner beneath it, sharper, almost cold. The combination should not have felt intimate. It did. She hated that. Heat radiated from him in a way the carefully regulated penthouse never did. Not dramatic warmth. Not enough to touch. But enough for her body to register the distance between them as fragile. He looked down at her, close enough now that she could see the exact stillness in his face. The restraint. The obsessive control required to make even silence feel dominant. And beneath it, something else. Recognition, perhaps, of what she had become in the dress he chose, of what she was trying not to reveal. Her pulse beat hard against the metal at her throat. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His hand lifted not to touch her, but to brush one finger beneath the line of her jaw, just enough to halt before contact and let the nearness do the damage. Her breath stalled. Tomorrow, he said quietly, you learn the first rule. The words slid through the air like silk over a blade. She forced herself to speak. And if I refuse? For the first time all evening, something unmistakable entered his expression. Pleasure. Not kindness. Not amusement. A darker satisfaction, like he had been waiting for exactly that question. He leaned closer, just enough for his voice to find the space near her ear. When he spoke, it was nearly a whisper. And whatever he said there, whatever promise, warning, or rule he placed against her skin, stole the answer from her before she could give it. The screen cuts to black. The story continues in the book. And whatever he said changed everything. The answer never came, because in that moment, she already knew. There was no turning back. The story continues in the book.